First off, sorry I haven't posted in a month. I just got done fighting the KMT. I didn't. I just haven't done laundry in like 2 weeks, so I'm running out of clothes. So this is the outfit I'm rolling with currently. So today's video is very straightforward. As the regular season is coming to an end, I thought I'd go over who I think are the 6 most disappointing players of this NBA season. Now, I posed this question to you guys on Twitter a couple days ago, and the responses I got back mostly went into this video. Let's start off with Josh Jackson of the Phoenix Suns. During the 2017 draft, I was not a big fan of Josh Jackson. In fact, before the draft, I had about 10 players ranked ahead of him, even though he ended up going 4th overall to the Phoenix Suns. And most of that was based around one simple reason. I didn't think Josh Jackson could shoot, and I didn't think he would ever be able to develop a consistent or good enough jump shot to be a star in the NBA. And so far, surprise, he has yet to develop a jump shot. He shoots a very low percentage from mid-range and 3, but also he just doesn't take many shots. I mean, look at this shot chart, for example. Jackson is clearly still uncomfortable shooting anywhere outside of about 10 feet. Now, in all fairness, Jackson is in a pretty bad situation, and I don't just mean he's playing for a bad team, although that is a big factor. There's also rotation issues. The Suns have a lot of forwards on their roster. Usually a bad young player with potential can get a lot of minutes on a really bad team because the team has nothing to fight for. But Jackson can't because the Suns actually have decent to really good young players with potential, like TJ Warren and Kelly Oubre. So Jackson has not seen a minutes increase compared to his rookie year. The disappointing part is that Jackson has not shown to be more productive in those same minutes this year compared to last year, statistically across the board. As an offensive player, Jackson is actually okay with the ball. He has some ball handling and playmaking. He's much better in transition, but without a jump shot, he is a negative in the half court. He's not really good enough with the ball for you to give him the ball, but then when he's off ball, he makes it harder for his teammates because the guy defending him, he usually has a lot of luxury and can leave him alone because he's such a non-threat from the perimeter. This, of course, makes life harder for his teammates, most notably Devin Booker. Defensively, Josh Jackson is a really good player. He's a really good player, although we all knew that coming into the NBA. But you're not looking for a defensive specialist with the 4th overall pick. So far, that's what it seems like Jackson will be. The second player on this list is a surprise to many, Andrew Wiggins. Do I really have to talk about this? Let's put it this way. His first 3 years in the league, people said he's still young, give him time. His 4th year in the league, he regressed. People said, wait, but that's because Jimmy Butler came to the team. He's clearly having trouble adjusting to playing alongside a superstar. And then his 5th year in the league this year, Jimmy Butler's gone. Andrew Wiggins still the same as he was last year. What's the excuse? What's the silver lining here? There is no silver lining. I briefly talked about Andrew Wiggins in the Timberwolves video that I made a couple of months ago. The problem with Wiggins is that when you look at his career progression, he really hasn't added much tangible skill to his game. In most ways, he's still the same player he was when he came into the league. He's still a high volume, low efficiency scorer with bad shot selection and who doesn't do much for you outside of scoring. I think at this point, any NBA fan that's been paying attention no longer expects Wiggins to really fulfill his #1 pick overall potential. Perhaps Andrew Wiggins will have a better career as a broadcaster or an analyst, because generally speaking, role players tend to make better analysts than stars do. Player number 3, Malik Monk. Like Josh Jackson, this is another second-year player who had a pretty bad rookie year and didn't improve much. This season, Monk was even surpassed by the rookie Miles Bridges on the Hornets depth chart. Monk has most of the same issues that Wiggins has as a player. He is a very inefficient scorer who doesn't do much outside of scoring. He's a pretty good three-point shooter who has gotten hot during some games, but he can't create his own shot off the dribble, at least not at the NBA level yet. If you look at his shot chart, he's shaping up to be basically a three-point specialist, but he's too much of a liability on defense to even play significant minutes as a three-point specialist. Most defensive metrics place him in the bottom 25% in the league amongst guards, which was a big reason why Miles Bridges got more minutes than him this season. And since the Hornets aren't exactly tanking, they're a playoff team or a playoff contending team, you really can't justify playing Malik Monk many more minutes than like a 9th or 10th man on the roster, which is what he was this season. Many Hornets fans were very excited when Malik Monk was drafted. Monk had a very good career at Kentucky. Charlotte clearly thought that he might be able to be the long-term backcourt mate to Kemba Walker. Now, at this point, I can already pretty safely say that I don't think Malik Monk is the answer alongside Kemba in the backcourt. To me, Malik Monk's realistic ceiling as a player, as of right now, is a six-man, right? A kind of scorer that comes off the bench, gives you bucket, can generate a little bit of offense, but really doesn't do much outside of that. I think there's still time for him to perhaps reach that ceiling, and if he does, that's not a bad career given where he was drafted. But so far, doesn't look like he'll even get to that point, and he's been quite disappointing. Player number 4, and this player, unlike the previous 3, is not exactly a young player. It's Tyreke Evans. Last season, I made a video talking about Tyreke Evans having a resurgent year in Memphis. He was healthy and carrying the Grizzlies with Mike Conley out. He was shooting and making threes at a ridiculously high rate, which had long been his major weakness. When he signed with Indiana last summer, I thought that with him, Indiana might have had the best bench unit in the league. And Indiana did still end up with one of the best bench units in the league, but it had little to do with Tyreke Evans. Tyreke Evans' three-point shooting is perhaps a great example of the regression to the mean. Last season, he shot about 40% from 3, way above his career average of 32%, and this season, he's regressed down to about 34%. Field goal percentage, 45 down to 38. In Indiana's offense, Tyreke found himself playing off-ball more than he did in Memphis, which meant less playmaking and getting to the foul line less. Perhaps most shocking is that Tyreke Evans, who has always been a great finisher and slasher, has been one of the worst finishers in the league this year. And that's really inexplicable. He shoots about 48% at the rim. 48%. That puts him almost dead last in the league amongst players who drive as often as he does. All of this accumulates into a steep decline in overall efficiency. Per cleaningtheglass.com, Evans' points per shot attempt, which is similar to points per 100 possession, went from 113.4 to 94.5, from the 72nd percentile amongst wing players last year to the 14th percentile amongst wing players this year. That's basically all you need to know. Now, the last 2 players on the list I'm going to talk about together because they play for the same team, and they are Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. One might be tempted to put the entire Celtics roster on this list, but I think out of all players, most people seem to agree that Tatum and Brown are probably the most disappointing. There's obviously quite some disappointment with Gordon Hayward, but the guy has an injury excuse. Brown and Tatum don't. For Jason Tatum, I think the reason why people are disappointed in him is more so that they simply set expectations too high for him. Because the guy had such a great rookie year, such a great series against the Sixers in the playoffs. People treated him like he was an established all-star, and then when Tatum happens to have a sophomore slump, people freak out. Now, what kind of went wrong with Tatum this season? Well, there are some things we can point out. Number 1 is his three-point shooting. During his rookie year, Tatum for much of the regular season was amongst the league leaders in three-point percentage, which was ridiculous for a rookie, and also for a rookie who didn't even shoot that well from 3 in college. But this season, his three-point percentage has dropped. Now, because he had such a successful rookie year, that probably gave him a little too much confidence in proportion to his actual skill level. That manifests itself in his shot selection. There is an excellent breakdown of Jason Tatum done by Ben Taylor over at Thinking Basketball. I'll link that down below if you want to check it out. There's one easy way to think about shot selection. Unless you're Curry or Durant or Harden or maybe 2 or 3 other players in the league, you really shouldn't be taking pull-up mid-range jumpers, contested jumpers, fadeaways with 10 seconds or 15 seconds left on the shot clock, especially in Brad Stevens' offense. To be fair, this issue has gotten better as the season has progressed. This was much more of an issue in the early to mid parts of the season. In the big picture, Jason Tatum, I think, will still be an all-star. He's just too talented of a scorer to not be that. I mean, this was a bit of a step back this season, and so it's still very fair to say that he's been a disappointing player. Now let's move on to Jaylen Brown, which is kind of a bit of a different case, but perhaps in some ways similar. So the thing with Jaylen Brown is that it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly what kind of held him back this season. Some people have kind of pointed out his per game stats, although again, he is playing less minutes this year with obviously Hayward being back, and if you adjust his stats for the minutes, translate it into per 100 possessions, for instance, his stats basically look the same, perhaps even slightly better than last season. Like Jason Tatum, one major area where Jaylen Brown regressed was in three-point shooting. So last season, he shot nearly 40% from the three-point line. This season, he's down to about league average, about 34%. In part because he's had to adjust his play style because this year's Celtics team in many ways does look different from last year's Celtics team. There are many times where Jaylen Brown simply looks a little bit lost on offense. There are possessions where he barely touches the ball, or perhaps he touches the ball, runs a pick and roll, but basically does nothing with it and just passes it back out. Given that this was only Brown's third year in the NBA, I think a lot of people expected him to make some sort of leap, to make some sort of big significant improvement. Although I think in hindsight, looking back on how this team is constructed compared to last year's team, Jaylen Brown was never really put in a position to have any sort of breakout year. I mean, just the fact that he's on this team with so many good wing players, which is again a big reason why he's only playing 26 minutes per game, whereas on most other teams, Jaylen Brown would be playing at least 30 minutes per game. So perhaps the inconsistency surrounding his minutes, as well as the fact that he got benched midway through the season, that could be pretty hard on a player trying to get into a good rhythm. So looking back and also taking into context the Celtics team as a whole and how they've been really disappointing as a team, I don't think too many people should be surprised that Tatum and Brown have had kind of the year that they've had. Although I think it's still very fair to be disappointed, because many people thought that they, along with the Celtics, would be much better than they have been this season. One big difference between Brown and Tatum and the first three guys on this list, as in Jackson, Wiggins, and Malik Monk, is that for Brown and Tatum, I'm not worried about Brown or Tatum in terms of their career and how they'll develop. They've already shown me enough previously that makes me say, okay, they'll be fine. They'll eventually figure it out. With Monk, Jackson, and Wiggins, I really can't say the same. So yeah, those have been my 6 most disappointing players this season. If you have your own pick, then put them down in the comments below. You can also hit me up on Twitter. Go give me a follow on there. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video.